Welcome back, Kings fans. I'm Jesse Cohen. This is a practice report for the morning of December 1st, 2012. I've just come back from El Segundo. Well, I live in El Segundo. I just come back from the Toyota Sports Performance Center where we saw the LA Kings practice this morning. And I think good news for most. The power play did practice this morning. And it appears, based on practice, and Jim Hiller confirmed it when we spoke to him afterwards, that the Kings will be going away from the five forwards on the power play. Brant Clark and Brian Dumoulin took reps with the power play. And then Quentin Byfield confirmed when he spoke to us, or I should say corroborated when he spoke to us, that one defenseman would be joining four forwards on the power play. And then when we had a chance to speak to Jim Hiller, he was asked directly about it. And he said, that yes, they would go with one defenseman and four forwards on the power play. And I double checked and said, will we see that tomorrow against the Washington Capitals, not just in practice? Because there was some, I don't know, it just wasn't clear based on his initial answer whether or not what he was saying was they were practicing it or whether or not they intended to use it. But in fact, he gave me the opportunity to ask a follow up, and I said, okay, well then, are we going to see this against the Washington Capitals? And he confirmed that yes, against Washington, they will start at least the game with what they practiced with, which was one defenseman and four forwards on the power play. So I see people joining as this goes on and on. Sorry, I didn't schedule this or let people know it was happening, but yes, those late who missed the very, very beginning of my sentence, the LA Kings will not be using a five forward power play against the Washington Capitals tomorrow. Now, it kind of took, to quote Ted Lasso yet again, it kind of took the wind out of my brat sails a little bit because I had intended to go in and ask a question about when enough is enough on the five forward power play. But the Kings beat me to it. And we saw in practice that, like I said, Brant Clark and Brian Dumoulin will be the two defensemen. Brant Clark with the top unit, Brian Dumoulin with the second unit. That is what they will be using on the power play. And let me just check my notes here real quick so I can tell you what the units were. The first unit will be Adrian Kempe, Andrei Kopitar, Andrei Kuzmenko, Kevin Fiala, and Brant Clark. And the second unit will be Quentin Byfield, Corey Perry, Yoel Armia, Alex Laferriere, and Brian Dumoulin. So we will see how successful the one defenseman and four forward power play is against the Washington Capitals. One of the questions I asked Joel Edmondson in between the end of practice and before we got a chance to talk to Jim Hiller was, do the penalty killers, those who are on the penalty kill but not on the power play, are they ever asked for their opinion about what the power play ought to do differently? And his answer was nobody's ever asking him for advice on the power play. A team employee assured me after the question was asked that, in fact, power play players do and have historically for years asked penalty killers on their own team for advice on how to beat penalty killers on other teams. And it only made sense to me. And I just thought, well, at some point, somebody's got to, I'm not the only person to have this position. Fans have obviously been talking about this, and Jim Hiller acknowledged it. I'll play the audio from that media availability in a second. But Jim Hiller acknowledged, like, we've been talking about it for weeks. And, Jim Fox, John Kelly, and I did a video for All the Kings Men where we recorded it after the morning after the Boston game. And Jim Fox even said during that recording, was before the practice the next morning, if we go out there and see five forwards on the power play, I will be surprised. We were all surprised when we went out to practice, and it turns out that that's exactly what they were doing. They did it for two more games. I think it was two more games after the Boston game, maybe three, but no more. According to what we saw at practice and according to Jim Hiller today at the media availability, the Kings will be using one defenseman and four forwards on the power play. So our long national nightmare is over, at least short term. And I believe that when Drew Doughty comes back, I think that's what the team is waiting for. But Jim Hiller I think the phrase he used was they'll weather the storm with Brian Dumoulin in the short term. There were some minor changes to the lines. So I will pop those up here on the screen for you in a second here. This is just based on practice this morning. The lines were more Kopitar and Kempe. That obviously stays the same. Fiala, Byfield, that does not stay the same. Adrian Kempe rejoins Andrei Kopitar. I thought that would happen a lot quicker than it did. I put it at 3 games. I think it lasted 5 or 6, but the end result is the same. Adrian Kempe and Ajay Kopitar are reunited, this time with Trevor Moore, which I actually thought looked pretty good. Kevin Fiala, Quentin Byfield, and UL Armia. Meanwhile, Kuzmenko, Deneau, and Laferriere skate as a line. Malat, Turcotte, and Perry. And yes, Joey A, I saw a career Dumoulin 5 power play points. But so let's just talk about that, because I saw Andrew Knoll tweet that before I get to the other tweet. The simplest reason why I think for me is it's the second unit. Like, and the Kings, and Jim Hiller has alluded to this, and plenty of media members have pointed it out. The Kings don't have an ideal second unit player as long as Drew Doughty is injured. It's one of the reasons I didn't necessarily agree with the trade of Jordan Spence. And people have pointed out, well, how many teams have that, have deep options, whatever. Brian Dumoulin, of the remaining 5 defensemen, once you assume that Brandt Clark will take that number 1 power play role, which he should, then you have Ceci, Anderson, Edmondson, Muvrari, and Dumoulin to choose from for the second unit. Who are you going to choose? Just by process of elimination, it's Brian Dumoulin. Brian Dumoulin did play on the power play 10 years ago in Pittsburgh, or 8 years ago, whatever it was. Joey's saying that Cody Ceci has 1 goal and 12 assists. Listen, I got into a disagreement at practice because I personally would put Jacob Muvrari on the power play for a number of reasons. One being, you want to distribute the minutes. 2, I've seen Jacob Muvrari play in different roles at different levels. When he's in Ontario, he has to play far more roles than he does when he's in LA, and he's handled himself quite well. But most importantly, and third, to me, the priority of the power play right now should be limiting the opponent's offensive chances. I don't even care how many goals get scored against the Kings when they're on the power play, because it turns out it's only 4. Then you throw in 2 more where the guy came immediately out of the penalty box. And I'm not even concerned with the goals against. For me, it's just the fact that when the Kings are on the power play, the other team has momentum, is gaining momentum, is getting chances, right? The opponent's penalty kill are playing the Kings power play in ways that I've never seen teams kill penalties before. And it's just silly. So I don't care about, who's the best choice, or who, what is this, the sort of disagreement I had during practice was to say, like, in a perfect world, your arguments make sense. I get it. But we're not living in a perfect world. For anyone who's watched Community or pays attention to geek culture, we're in the darkest timeline here right now with the Kings power play. I think I said it after the last game. Like, it's the worst it's been since 1977. Like, it's bad. It's not just not scoring, it's giving up momentum to the opponent. So you had to change something. So is Brian Dumoulin the ideal choice to be the defenseman on the second power play unit? No, there isn't an ideal choice. But, so that's that. So I get it. There are no good choices. And when you have no good choices, you just have to pick one. Just make a choice. It's not going to be great. We're not going to love it. So I get the point, Joey. And I see the stats you're digging up, but like, I personally, I would put 2 defensemen on the power play. I would say none of this is working. It's a total disaster and we need to fix it. So let's just start from scratch. Let's go back 30 years and go back to a 2 defenseman power play. I would put Clark and Edmondson on. Yes, Zeth, I agree. We need Luis Guzman to come and fix the power play. We don't need Craig Pelton. That's the dean from Community to do it. And somebody asked me at practice today, so you would sacrifice the power play essentially by putting Jacob Muvrari on it. Now, I think that's a little bit harsh to Jacob Muvrari. Like I said, I've seen him play a larger role in different settings. He's perfectly capable. That's the other thing. Is like, if you're in the NHL, you should be able to do whatever the coaching staff asks of you. If you have a player on your roster who cannot be used on special teams because you would be sacrificing that opportunity, then why is that person on your roster? Like, you shouldn't be getting that specialized in the 22-man, 23-man roster you have. But more importantly, like I said, the power plays are already sacrificed. Like, to say, putting a defensive-minded defensive defenseman on the power play at this point sacrifices the power play. Net power play, the Kings are under 10%. It's the worst it's been since before I was born. The season in which I was born, and I'm in my late 40s. Like, that's how bad it is. So I don't know why there's this. It's one of the things I don't get about sports. It's this perpetual optimism. And actually, listening to Jim Hiller today, I actually realized, I mean, I've had this thought before, but it really sank into me today. I get why Jim Hiller is an effective coach with the players on the LA Kings. I suspect, anyway. I shouldn't say I know, because Jim Hiller speaks like, and I think this is a strength, to be perfectly clear. Jim Hiller talks about the decisions he makes and the way that he approaches the coaching and the way that the coaching staff approaches the team, the way you would want to if you're an athlete, which is, let's focus on right now. One of the questions I asked, and I'll play the full audio in a bit, is, does the fact that you're in first place give you runway to experiment with things? If you weren't in first place, would you feel less, able to make these experiments? And he said, I get the question, but you can hear him in his own words soon. I won't put words in his mouth, but he said basically, like, we don't think about it that way. We're not experimenting for experiment's sake. We do things because we think it's going to help us, and we don't feel like we have more runway when we're winning, or there's more pressure when we're losing. And if you're an athlete, I think that's probably great. Don't get too high, don't get too low. And Jim Hiller was a player, and so I think that probably, really fosters a strong locker room bond between the coaching staff and the players if they have that attitude. The problem is that those of us watching are not players. And like myself particularly, I think way far ahead. I'm looking at next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, or in this case, I'm looking at the playoffs when it comes to the power play and thinking this cannot continue. Anyway, the point of all that is to say it won't continue. Jim Hiller confirmed to us, for those of you who are joining us a little bit later than the rest, against the Washington Capitals, at least to start the game, the LA Kings will not be going with a 5-forward power play. There will be one defenseman on each unit. It will be Brandt Clark on the first unit, Brian Dumoulin on the second unit. Now, Zach Dooley addressed this. Let me make sure I've got the right. Yeah, there it is. The right tweet up. And so Zach Dooley says, sounds like a defenseman on both units with Brian Dumoulin on power play 2. I think it makes sense. With Doughty out, Dumoulin has good poise with the puck and should be reliable as the last man back. Changes were needed, and assume we'll see them tomorrow night. We will see them tomorrow night. That was asked of Jim Hiller, and he did confirm it. And I am going to go ahead and play. Now, I only have a still photo of Jim Hiller with the audio because I didn't record the availability for video. I just put my recorder on the table. But here is, if I can find the right thing, here is the audio from Jim Hiller's availability. It's about 7.5 minutes. So we're just going to listen to it. And if you can't hear any of the questions and you want to ask, just put the comment in and I will tell you what the question was.
Jim, the season's 30% complete. What's the significance of being in first place?
I don't know. It hasn't felt like we've been playing like a first place team from start to finish. But what it does tell you, Dennis, is how close it is and how we've just continued to grind our way through it. It's been frustrating at times, but what I would say is, the players have pretty much stuck with it. And the fear always is when it gets frustrating that it starts to fall apart, and then you can snowball. So there have been some times where we've been challenged, but stuck with it. So I think it's a good sign. I would say.
Practice today, power play looked a little bit different. Is anything you can share on just so changing things up a little bit in that department?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this for a while. I think more than anything, the energy had to change. Just, we kept going back to the well, and it just had to change. So if you look at Brian Dumoulin, I talked to him this morning. I said, when's the last time you played the power play? And he said, I think 217 in Pittsburgh. And I said to him, when's the next time you're going to play the power play? He said, I don't know. I said, well, it's going to be today. So that's a pretty big gap. That's 8 years. And we'll see, again, we're still waiting on Drew. And I don't know if he'll be that long, but he might mind the gap in the meantime.
Brian has been more involved, right, of late? Just generally speaking, before this decision.
Sure. I mean, when Drew goes out, that's, 23, 24, so someone's got to pick up the slack. Moverari's picked up some, but then there's extra to go around, and he's really filled a void there for us. Yeah, played well.
How many practices with a new player on a special teams role do you like to have before you implement it in game action?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a specific number. All the players, with the exception of Dumo, for the last 8 years, have played on the power play at different times, have played with each other at different times. So we didn't even practice it under full pressure today. We just kind of, let's just get in our spots, let's move the puck around, have a little pressure, let's feel good, let's go play tomorrow. So we just don't want to overthink that part of it right now.
And up front too, Jim, it looked like a few little changes.
No, just 1 sec. Did you have a follow-up to that, Jesse?
I'm just curious then if we might see it tomorrow night.
Yeah, you'll see it as it was practiced today. Yeah, if that's where you're going, yeah.
And again, just a few little forward changes of
Kempe, yeah. And I mentioned it post game. So we gave those, I put them together at different times, taken apart. We said let's give that line of 3 a good run and see what we think, see how we like it. And I would say they were okay, but they didn't, give us probably what we wanted, what maybe we expected. So it's time to make a change again. We just wanted to make. I think I played 5 games or 6 games together. Wanted to make sure to give them a good run, see what it looks like. But now we decided we'll have to make it look different.
Joel Armia, is he becoming like a Swiss Army knife type guy?
He is, yeah. Well, I would say, on the wings in particular, Morsey, Laugh have been that player. Looks like Army's kind of sliding into that type of a role now too, where he's left wing, right wing. Mm-hmm. He's played center before, taking some face-offs, penalty kill, 5 power play. So he's kind of been all over the map, but he's in our evaluations post-game, he just continues to do the right thing, both offensively defensively and offensively. He's been one of the guys that hangs onto the pucks and protects it, comes through the neutral zone, makes the play. He's been really good. So we think he'll complement those two.
Can your defense help add to solve the offensive problem by maybe becoming a little bit more aggressive in the offensive zone or via the rush?
Well, yeah. I mean, offense in the league now is typically 4 players. You can say 5, usually a 4-man rush, the 5th guy. They can. Clarkey in particular, I would say, with Drew out, but they're not a rush up and down the ice, type of decor. So you got to do what you're comfortable with. When you start getting outside of your comfort zone, whatever it is, the results usually don't translate as well. You've established yourself in the league as this for a reason. You're always trying to push your game a little bit, but that's what I would say. You got to play within yourself at the same time.
The league is bunched up and close together, but you are in first place in the division. Does being in first place give you as a coaching staff more runway to experiment with things that maybe aren't working as quickly as you'd like them to?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you've heard me say it, and it's a broken record. Honestly, we focus on that next game and the next win. I hope we have a great week and we're clear. And you can say, well, now you got a little bit of a lead. You know what I mean? And the same question could be asked. Or you have a poor week and you say, now you're, can you not do that? I would like to think we try to focus on getting better each and every game, doing what we think we need to do, not experimenting for the sake of experimenting, but we think this is going to help us. And so I don't think that changes wherever you're at. You know what I mean? I think we kind of try to do that without seeing where we are in the standings.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there because after that, if I remember correctly, it starts getting into questions about the upcoming game against why is it there we go, sorry about that. The next questions sort of focus on the Washington Capitals and the upcoming games against Chicago, so not terribly relevant today, but if you had any questions about Jim Hiller's comments, I'm happy to answer them or share my thoughts. But that was Jim Hiller speaking to the media this morning after practice. Again, for those of you who joined in the middle of that availability or who joined late, the LA Kings will, at least according to what Jim Hiller said, will be moving away from the 5-forward power play to start the game against the Washington Capitals tomorrow night at Crypto.com Arena. It will be Brant Clark on the first unit with, let me pull up my notes again, Andrei Kopitar, Andrei Kuzmenko, Kevin Fiala, and Adrian Kempe. And the second unit will be Brian Dumoulin, Quentin Byfield, Yoel Armia, Corey Perry, and Alex Laferriere. I'm not sure that'll fix the problem, frankly, because the power play has become so disastrous that, as somebody was pointing out to me, they're not even entering the zone confidently. So I'm not entirely sure what one simple switch will do, but it's a start, and they couldn't keep doing what they were doing. It had reached catastrophic levels. I mean, Dennis Bernstein asked Jim Hiller after the Boston game, I think he called it abysmal, and Jim Hiller did not push back. So I think a lot of us assumed that this would have happened after the Boston game. It didn't. What was the last game? Who was the last opponent they had? Vancouver. In Vancouver, I mean, it didn't hurt them, but it didn't help them. And in Anaheim, similarly, actually, well, in Vancouver, actually, I guess you could argue maybe it hurt them. Vander Kane scored that goal coming out of the penalty box. I suppose that was not technically a shorthanded goal. And I'm not even sure that the power play did anything wrong to set that up. Every now and then those situations happen. But listen, I know I'm preaching to the converted because everybody acknowledges. I haven't spoken to a single person who has defended what's going on with the power play, and that includes Jim Hiller by his own words following the Boston game. So the 5-forward power play appears to have reached its end. Kinghouse says, I'd like to see Eddie on the power play instead of Dumoulin. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier, Kinghouse, and I'll simply say this. There are no good options. So at this point, I'm just happy that the obvious change has happened. Because I genuinely, to quote one of the most quotable movies, I think, Zoolander, I felt like I was taking crazy pills. I mean, I think a lot of people did, because when everybody sees a problem, including the person who's in charge of it, and it still doesn't change, it's baffling. And one of the quotes that my dad always used to tell me that I sort of have lived on is if the fans can see it, surely the coaches can see it, or the players or management, whoever. Like if the fans can collectively see something is a problem, then surely management sees it. And I don't think that's always necessarily the case, but in this case, they made it clear that they saw it. I mean, they saw it and they didn't change it for a couple of games, but now it's being changed. So hopefully that'll be good. Mike says, in some sense, I think it's a good thing that Hiller doesn't knee-jerk react every time things aren't going well. I agree in theory, but this wouldn't have been a knee-jerk reaction. But he says, yes, but sometimes it does take him entirely too long to react. This is, I mean, at this point, the argument was, well, the power play was real good when Andrei Kuzmenko came in last year, and it was so good that we had to give it some runway this year to recapture what it was. First of all, it wasn't that good last year. I mean, I don't have the number in the back of my mind, but let's go ahead and just look it up. I just out of curiosity, see how good it was last year after the acquisition of Andrei Kuzmenko. So they got him in March of 2025. I'm just going to put it at March 1st. I know it was later than that. And we'll say the end of the season came in late April. So in the final 25 games of the season last year, the LA Kings power play was at 23.9% in those 25 games. That's not so good that you have to keep sticking with something. If it was 40% or 50%, or if it was more, geez, it'd be the best power play in the history of the game. But if it was insanely mind-bendingly good, then I'd go, yeah. Oh, who cares if it's struggling right now? Stick with it. Hi from the Hammer. Hello, the Hammer. But 23.9% is not that impressive. And I'll go ahead and I'll even tweak it a little bit more. I'll move it up to March, because I think the actual deadline was March 7th. The LA Kings power play over the final 22 games was, again, 23.9%, no substantial change. I'll move it up some more just to March 22nd, just to see if at any point it took a substantial leap. In the final 15 games, it was 26%. We'll go to April 1st, just out of curiosity. In the final 9 games, it was 24%. So, I mean, even when it was good, it wasn't incredible. Mike wants to know what it was in the playoffs. Give me 2 seconds to change it to the playoffs. I've got it. All right, hold on. I got to tweak these drop-down menus. In the playoffs, the LA Kings power play last year probably wasn't that great. 40%. Wow. Okay. Well, that's way better than I thought it was, but that's an incredibly small sample size. That's 6 games. But the point is, at this point now, we're 25, 26 games into the season. Whatever track record that previously existed for the power play has now been erased by this new track record, because the Kings are now 25 games into the season. And yes, it wasn't. Kinghouse 790 says it wasn't incredible. You could tell how big a difference it made in that last half of the game. So sure. And if, again, for me, it's not even about the goals for or against. It's about the momentum. It's about what's happening around the goals, because goals, sometimes they're chaotic. Sometimes puck bounces in off a guy's butt and you don't plan for it. It just happens. But if the other team is consistently getting chances against you, if when your power play is out there, the other team is getting momentum, that is A, it's a problem because you're ceding momentum. B, it means that now even it means the other team is emboldened to play harder against you. If they don't care about your power play because they know they're going to get just as many chances, and obviously not just as many chances, but if they know your power play A won't score and B they can just continue to play as they normally would, that means that they don't have to play as tight a checking game. They don't have to play as responsibly. They don't have to play as focused. They can just focus on offense. And that's a problem. And then, and I heard somebody say, like, well, the five forward power play, they look nervous. They're not going well. And presumably that kind of thing bleeds over into 5-on-5 time, right? If you're out there constantly as a 5 forward power play and guys are messing up or it's not working and the chemistry is wrong and things are spiraling out of control the other way, surely to God that then changes when you're 5-on-5 and you're looking at the same guys on the bench going, that guy messed up that play or whatever. Anyway, in the gravel, Trap says, my wife has been saying for a while now that Clark needs to be on power play 1. He's one of the few players on the team capable of making plays on the power play. Well, your wife's not wrong, and she's going to get what she asked for. Brant Clark will be on the number 1 power play unit to start the game, at least. We'll see how long it lasts, but at least to start against the Washington Capitals, Jim Hiller told us that is what we would get. Do you think that's how the Kings feel when they're on the PK with all these shorthanded goals? I mean, possibly King House 798. I've referenced this before, but a few years ago, Zach Dooley and I were talking to Trevor Moore, and Trevor Moore said that one of the reasons that the Kings penalty kill was successful, and one of the ways that you have to be successful on the penalty kill, is you have to outwork your opponent. And he said a lot of teams, when they're on the power play, they forget the element of work. And obviously the penalty killing team is going to be working harder. They have to, because they are a man down. But he said sometimes the work, you can be outworked on the power play because, or the LA Kings penalty kill can outwork their opponents when they're on the power play because they assume that the man advantage will give them the upper hand and they stop working hard. I don't know necessarily that that's what I see on the Kings power play, but it's part of it, right? Like when guys are just stationary, when guys are like, well, we're on the power play, so I'm just this is my spot and I'm not going to skate very much. My feet aren't going to be moving. I'm not going to be prepared to make snap decisions. I'm going to get the puck and I'm going to hold on to it for an extra half second or 2 seconds. Well, that just gives the other team the opportunity to outwork you. And like I said, I just don't think that sort of thing starts and stops within the 2-minute boundaries of a power play or a penalty kill or whatever it is. So Clark has been so hot, though. I love the way he's been skating with all his ice time. Yes, Brant Clark has looked very, very good. I would like to see Brant Clark not only get power play time, I would like to see him get penalty kill time. And even if it means the penalty kill gets a little bit worse, I think long term, that's to the benefit of Brant Clark and the team. That's just me. Like I said, the difference between someone like me and an athlete or a coach is that the coach and the athlete are focused, rightly so, on what's immediately in front of them. And I'm thinking about next week, next season, the playoffs, 5 seasons from now, 10 seasons from now. Sometimes I get wrapped up in thinking 30 seasons from now, which is dangerous and no good to anybody. Sorry, I just ranting as always. For those of you who have joined, and I see a lot more people have joined, the 5 forward power play appears to be a thing of the past, at least to start the game against Washington. It's really the only reason I hopped on here, because the line changes we saw, I don't think are that drastic. Adrian Kempe will be reunited with Anze Kopitar. I didn't think it would take as long as it did. I thought it would be less than 3 games. It winds up being 5 or 6 games. The defensive pairs stay the same, I think. Anderson will stay on the right. He spoke to the media today about the difference between skating on the right and the left. He's up with Mikey Anderson. Muvarari is with Ceci. Dumoulin is with Clark. And so, I mean, that could be not an argument for Dumoulin on the power play, but the fact that your 2 power play defensemen now are on the same unit means that when the power play ends, whoever it is that's, whether it's the top unit or the second unit on the power play, the first D pair that you throw over the boards after that change will be rested, right? Neither one of them will be on the ice. So that's I don't know if that plays into it, but it could just be a silver lining, a secondary bonus. You want your two guys. Now, that won't be the case, presumably, when Drew Doughty comes back. But when the power play is over, you want, you need fresh legs. You need a new line. And the other team, I don't know if other teams do it the way the Kings do it, but when the Kings are coming off the penalty kill, they go with lines, they load up on offense, right? So that's when you'll see Kevin Fiala and Andrei Kopitar out there together with whoever it is. When the penalty kill's over, the Kings go and throw out fresh legs. And so it's entirely possible that opponents might do the same thing. In this case, with Dumoulin and Clark as a defensive pair, whatever the first pair over the boards is after the power play on that first shift, whether it's Anderson and Edmondson or Muvrari and Ceci, it won't be one of those guys. So you don't have to get worried about being caught out in that case. Now, Jim Hiller also, I can't remember the exact phrase he used. We just heard it, but it wasn't whether there's bridge the gap maybe before Drew Doughty comes back. It seems pretty clear that when Drew Doughty comes back, Doughty will replace Brian Dumoulin as one of the defensemen on the power play. Unclear whether or not Brant Clark will be moved to the second unit or Drew Doughty will take second unit duty. I suppose that'll depend on how successful the power play is, but we will see. Sorry. So in the gravel trap says, sorry if this was covered. I joined late. Kuzi has been touching the puck way too much. He needs to go to one touch school. It wastes so much time, especially on the power play. Listen, I don't disagree with you. I think it's something that happens to a lot of forwards on the LA Kings power play. I think it's been happening for years, and it's not just Kuzmenko. When they get the puck, it stops. There's not a lot of movement on the LA Kings power play. There really hasn't been. The few times that it's been successful is when that movement has been introduced. And it was a couple of years ago when Jim Hiller was brought in initially to be the power play coach. But yeah, I think, and I don't know, I could be wrong about this. I'd have to ask people far smarter than I am about hockey. I just think it's really hard to shift your mentality when you play the kind of defense that the LA Kings do and have now for 20 years, to suddenly go from methodical, deliberate, defensively responsible hockey to creative, fast, risky, instantaneous decisions, instinct driven, not systems driven. I suspect that's probably pretty hard to do, and we see it play out time and time again. I mean, no disrespect to Andrei Kopitar or Drew Doughty, both of whom will have their numbers retired, both of whom should get statues and be in the Hall of Fame, et cetera, et cetera. But those two guys on the power play, I mean, how many times and I'm not the only one to make this observation, how many times did the two of them just plant their feet and start playing catch around the perimeter together on the power play, right? Like I'm saying it because I've seen other people say it a bajillion times. It is not, I'm not making it up. Let's put it that way. And I think it's, like I said, because this team has played a very reliably sound method of systems driven, coached defensive hockey. And when you then have to switch up to a system that promotes and rewards spontaneity, creativity, snap second decisions, you can't system your way into a successful power play, right? You need talent, you need shooting, you need creativity, you need guys who will pounce on opportunities. And that's not LA Kings hockey. It's just not who they are. So, but it has gotten so bad now that things have to change. Mike says it's also kind of Kuzi's thing, though, the things that makes him dynamic. It is. You're 100% correct. And King House says when Drew comes back, I think he needs to seriously get a drop in minutes and have Clark start to take over a little more. I have no problem with Drew Doughty eating up all of the defensive minutes that are available to him. I think he should be the first over the board on the penalty kill. Like, he is still Drew Doughty on the defensive end of the ice. The problem is, even when he was peak Drew Doughty on the offensive end of the ice, like, yes, you can go back in the playoffs and watch the highlights of him doing those end-to-end goals. I think there was one against New York where Williams hits him and he takes the puck in stride between his legs and then, at the top of the faceoff circle, and then makes a move and cuts in and scores. And I think against New Jersey, he had an end-to-end goal in 2012. I mean, like, Drew Doughty is not an offensive bum, right? Like, he is capable. But yes, when you have Brant Clark, and I've said this, I said it on Sunday, I went on somebody else's show. If they want Brant Clark to ever become the best version of Brant Clark, you got to start letting Brant Clark spread his wings. I'm just going to quote another movie. Sorry to constantly be quoting TVs and movies today, but the other guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, and Mark Wahlberg's character constantly says, "I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly." Brand Clark's a peacock. We all know it. That's why he was drafted. That's why he was on Team Canada. It's why he has a bajillion points in his juniors career. It's why he's on those lists of, the most points scored by defensemen in juniors, whatever it is. So yeah, you got to let him fly. You got to let me fly. Exactly. So anyway, I think we're going to wrap this up because we've been going about 35 minutes. And then, yeah, if the power play isn't doing the dance, they aren't going to open shooting lanes. Yeah, it's just, listen, it's reached the point. We know it's not good enough. The coaching staff appears to finally have had it. So we'll see 1 defenseman, 4 forwards. I'm not entirely sure that'll be enough change, but we will see. We will find out. On a personal note, for anybody who cares or anybody going to the game, tomorrow night's game is another Hockey Fights Cancer game, and I have been asked to bang the drum before the game in honor of Hockey Fights Cancer and in honor of my having had cancer this past year. So excited to do that, and I appreciate being asked to do it. So just throwing it out there, if anybody's going to the game and you want to see me embarrass myself while incorrectly banging the drum, that's happening tomorrow night. I hope I didn't spoil any surprises for the Kings game ops, but that's where I'll be tomorrow night. So hope you enjoyed this. Hope any of the information was even remotely useful. And we will probably have a morning skate update tomorrow morning. And we'll have a post-game show after the game. And yeah, we'll keep doing this as long as you guys keep watching. So thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.